Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to have a spoiler-filled discussion of Phandelver, of Dungeons & Dragons Canon Hardback, Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. So I am extremely excited about this brand new D&D Canon Hardback. I think it's a very strong return to old school adventuring, and old school from the perspective of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is now 10 years old, right? And so this is returning to literally the Lost Mine of Phandelver, which is the first Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition adventure, and it's pretty incredible that 5e is now old school, right? You know, a decade old, right? And also Phandelver and Phandalin have been in Dungeons & Dragons long before that as well. So very, very exciting. Really, I'm really enjoying this excellent Canon Hardback, and I want to talk about Chapter 2 now, and what the player characters are getting up to, and what the focus of the story is. So at this point, the player characters were searching for we're going to talk with their friend Gundren Rockseeker, and they find that Gundren Rockseeker has been captured by the Cragmaw band goblins, right? And that Gundren Rockseeker has been taken specifically to the Cragmaw Castle. The player characters don't exactly know where Cragmaw Castle is, right? And so they continue on, and they're trying to find their way to Cragmaw Castle. And where they are, they're close to the Neverwinter Woods, and they need to go to Phandalin. Now, Phandalin is this incredibly important. It is the most iconic Dungeons & Dragons city ever. And the reason why is, one, I did not know this. Did you know, this is an astounding fact, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition has outsold every single edition of Dungeons & Dragons 1, 2, 3, and 4 combined, right? And Lost Mine of Phandelver is the starter set that has sold for the majority of that time. And just so you're aware, Phandalin is featured in the Essentials Kit. And the Essentials Kit is where I really ran a lot. I ran 2.5 years around Phandalin, and played in Adventures in Phandalin, and ran one of my best, actually by far my best Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign was based in Phandalin. So it's a really iconic town, and it's just great to visit it and get it explained in incredibly high detail. And and also, just to be clear, I really think Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk, is iconically Dungeons & Dragons, and is going to become a modern classic, because I think Lost Mine of Phandelver is a fan favorite for a lot of dungeon masters and a lot of players. It's their gate to Dungeons & Dragons. So to honor it with this bigger, bolder presentation of it is really fantastic. I absolutely love it. So the player characters are looking for Gundren Rockseeker and his map to the Lost Mine of Phandelver, right? And they're going to find it in Cragmaw Castle, but they don't know where Cragmaw Castle is. They're coming out of the Neverwinter Woods, and at this point, they encounter Phandalin. So they're like, oh, Phandalin, okay, it's this little town. We're just going to be able to roll into Phandalin. We'll be able to stay at the Stonehill Inn. We'll be able to deal with the chapel, and, deal with the merchants, and there's a hedge witch there, like maybe get some herbs, some healing potions. And so they're just ready to interact with Phandalin. And what they find is the Red Brands, okay? Now, what are the Red Brands? The Red Brands are a group of ruffians who have run roughshod over Phandalin, right? So Phandalin is a regular town, and these Red Brands show up, and they're a bunch of human miscreants, right? That's literally the word that the book uses for miscreants, right? And essentially they're hooligans, they're ruffians, they're goons, right? They're just robbers, thugs, bandits who have put on these red cloaks to give themselves some gravitas, to feel like a group, right? but they're thugs and bandits and ruffians and goons and miscreants, right? Who are running roughshod over Phandelver, right? And this is really interesting because I think, it's Dungeons and Dragons remembering exactly who it is and what it is. And in Dungeons and Dragons, we want people to be heroes. We want them to stand up to evil, right? And I love Dungeons and Dragons, and I believe that Dungeons and Dragons has a lot to say about culture. And we have cities right now that are being run over, right, by people who are like, I'm free to do crime whenever I want. Nobody's going to arrest me. Nobody's going to do anything about it, right? And this is, and basically, this is Dungeons and Dragons saying, hey, crime matters, right? Like, and people should stop crime, right? And that's really what the red brands are. Is they sit outside of every major institution. They just kind of hassle people. They ask them for money. They threaten them, and they do whatever they want with the town and the town's resources and the town's people, right? Until the adventures show up, right? And this is what I love about Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is, if a new group of players, if somebody goes to Target and buys, the Essentials kit off the shelf, right? They're going to learn about Phandelver, right? And here in this adventure, Dungeons and Dragons is saying, that's interesting because it's saying, hey, you're the hero. You're going to stop the bad things from happening, which is really fascinating. And I'm really fascinated about Dungeons and Dragons as we go forward, as increasingly, I think many people are feeling like, who's going to stop crime? And they don't know what the answer to that is in America, right? Like, who will stop crime in America? If I see a crime happening, who do I call? Who's going to do something about it, right? And I think for many decades, we knew the answer to this, right? But now, increasingly, people are like, if I make a call, I don't know if anybody's going to do anything about this. I might get put on a list, right? Maybe somebody will scrawl some information on a piece of paper, but I don't have any confidence that this is going to be managed, right? And so, increasingly, we're living in this America where we're like, who does something about crime? Is there a group that handles this? And increasingly, people are like, I don't know the answer, right? And Dungeons and Dragons is saying, in the Dungeons and Dragons campaign, in a Dungeons and Dragons session, you do something about it, right? Your player character stops crime, right? You're authorized to do that, right? And I love that these red brands are perfectly characterized as ruffians, miscreants, criminals. Manage them, right? It's a powerful statement from Dungeons and Dragons. And it gives people a sense of hope, right? That maybe there's somebody left who would do something about crime, right? Like when they were called, they would do something about crime, right? Interesting, So basically, at this point, the player characters roll into Phandelver, and they see that Phandelver has been run over by these red brands, right? So the player characters are there, right? And they're for actual heroes, adventurers, who say, no, you will not take one gold piece out of this hardworking merchant's pocket. You will not sit on their stoop and name call, or, we will kick you back. We will give courage to these town people and say, here, crime does not pay, right? And your foul language and your spitting off the stoop, we will give you steel. That is our answer to your harsh words. You will pay for your miscreantness. You will pay for your ruffianness. You will pay for running people away from good, hardworking merchants' shops, right? And the player characters just step up and are like, you know what? I'm not going to go to another shop and see good, silver keeping customers run off by foul-mouthed hooligans, right? Let's give these people some steel. And that's exactly what they do, right? So chapter 2 is the heroes of your of your Dungeons and Dragons campaign heroing, stopping crime, putting steel to the criminal, right? Very, very fascinating, right? Very fascinating, right? Now, what gets even more interesting, and is pure Dungeons and Dragons, is the player characters go with Gundren, Rockseekers, Human Warrior Companion, and they stop the Red Brands, and they go to the Red Brands lookout. They go to the Red Brands hideout, right? Which is an old manor that's been taken over, right? But what they find is that under the old manor is a what do they find under the old manor? Oh yes, they find a hidden stronghold. Wait a second, what? Right? And there's literally a stronghold built underneath this old manor, and this stronghold is literally fortified and has resources far beyond the likes of red-caped hooligans, right? And so what they find is that these troublemakers at the top, right, in Phandelver, are really a ruse for a much bigger, stronger group, right? And they also find that the Red Brands are led by one human wizard who is named Glassstaff. And he's named Glassstaff because he has a magic staff which is made out of glass, right? And so what's interesting is they actually they defeat Glassstaff, and what they find is that Glassstaff actually reports to an even higher, more mysterious figure named the Spider, and that the Spider wants to specifically wants to take the adventurers off the board, because Spider realizes that the adventurers are the true threat, right? And that the adventurers could turn over whatever plots are going on in this world, and the fact that there's this hidden stronghold underneath an old manor in Phandelver means there's something bigger is afoot, right? And the player characters are now getting this view of a bigger, broader threat to Phandelver itself. But this secret villain, the Spider, right? Also, they know that the Spider wants to take them out and wants to deal with them. And the reason why is they realize, that the player characters, the adventurers, are enough to stop crime in an entire town, right? 4 people are enough to stop crime in an entire town, right? And so I really think it's fascinating, again, the cultural commentary that is coming out of each one of these D&D Canon hardbacks. And I will say, I think it's starting to become a lot more based. The idea that 4 people could bring justice to a city, right, is very bold, especially today, when increasingly the question of justice and who will bring justice is not nearly as clear as it ever was, right? And so very, very interesting. I'm really loving this Phandelver and Below, the Shattered Obelisk. I'd love to hear your thoughts, what you're taking away from this D&D Canon hardback, and what your experience from the newest D&D Canon hardback is. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.